Hi, I'm Edwin Samuelson, and welcome to the CineFiles, your weekly film fix, aka the show that allows you to eavesdrop on the conversations of fellow film fans. Today, we're going to be discussing Danny Boyle and his films, and we want to thank our viewers from last week for tuning in to our live show, which was a great success. In fact, we planned a few more, which we will display on the screen. Hopefully, Gloria will bring those up so you guys can see them.
Stay tuned.
Stay tuned for those, and also be sure to check out our websites for more information on the show and live tapings and see shows that you've missed. But before I begin, let me introduce my panel. To my left is Eric Cohen, and to his left, Michael Foltz.
We used to be co-hosts. Now we're panels.
Well,
we keep getting smaller. Are we going to be extras next week?
Our co-host. Well, but let me hear. I want to introduce, through the modern day technology, wonders of it, our co-host. Say hello out there, Jeff. Jeff Galashaw, who is joining us through
Live
telephone.
from Brooklyn.
So wait, Jeff is a co-host, but we're
Hey,
panelists.
Jeff, thank you for being there. Thank you for being by the phone. You couldn't be here in person, but you are here now through voice, so thank you.
Just so you know, Jeff, since you're at home, you become a co-host. Eric and I actually made the taping. We're panelists. Edwin keeps demoting us.
Yeah, you guys are demoted.
We're going to work in the director's room next week.
Yeah, that's good.
You'll be mopping up the floor next week.
We should have a picture of you.
It was awesome. Jeff can do this show in his underwear.
Yeah, that's not really all that fair.
He can eat. He can do it in his underwear.
Well, let's get into our
Or as I
topic
like
for
to
today,
say,
because there's a
underwear.
lot of
You
movies to
fucking
discuss.
suck,
I'm excited. All right, today we're discussing British filmmaker Danny Boyle, who, as many of you know, has directed Train Spotting, 28 Days Later, The Beach, etc., etc. Well, he's a very talented filmmaker, and he just opened it up with his newest film,
Shemp
which is
Boyle.
Sunshine. But before we get into Sunshine, let's discuss his early film.
Let's just talk about his canon.
Well, his first film is actually one of my favorite films. It was a highly acclaimed, low-budget film starring then-unknown Ewan McGregor, Shallow Grave, which takes...
And another unknown, Christopher Eccleston, who
actually
is not as well known as Ewan McGregor, but also a very accomplished actor who's done a lot of genre work. And he's a very underrated actor, and I'm hoping he's more of a character actor now, but I think he's being seen in more leading roles. Did a one-season stint as Doctor Who, and we'll be probably seeing him in a BBC production of the remake of The Prisoner.
He's a very good actor. Everyone in the movie, it's actually, that's the one thing that Danny Boyle does really get from his movies, is very good acting from everybody, especially in Shallow Grave, which is a very mean-spirited film that takes various, I guess you could say, elements of Hitchcock and many other thrillers of the old years.
It's a very dark, very Lady Killers-esque, but
it has a
gorier.
very dark.
Yeah.
I'm talking as black as comedy as it can get in it.
It's such a black comedy that it's really not funny.
It's not
well,
really funny.
I mean, you know, though it's typical. I mean, it's very a certain kind of British comedy, though. It's not unusual for example, we had a conversation before the taping about, you know, British TV. And I used to live in England. One of my favorite shows was the comic strip, and a bunch of those guys moved on to do the young ones. But in the comic strip was basically each episode was like a movie made for TV, and they used to do episodes that were that mean-spirited and that dark. And it felt like Danny Boyle came from that school of filmmaking and storytelling.
Yeah, I like the way he tells the story in this one, is that it's really interesting as you get three people, kind of arrogant idiots, you know, who get a flatmate in their flat because they need to pay the rent. He ends up dead, and they find a suitcase full of cash. And this suitcase of cash, it becomes the Pandora's box for these people's personalities, that they become really, truly, from obnoxious to truly evil. And I think it's the thing that makes it work for me is the transition of the characters. Some people said it was a little too much, where some people become killers and what efforts they do to keep this money, but it really does show you there's a very dark side of human nature.
It does, yeah. It shines a bright light on the darkness of the human soul, basically.
I love it.
It's a great independent film, and it's one of those films that you look back on and go, okay, it's very obvious. This Mr. Boyle has some talent. And he worked with John Hodge, the producer, and I forgot the scriptwriter's name.
Did he write the
No. It was a triumvirate. It was John Hodge, the producer. I forgot that the screenwriter actually went to medical school and became a doctor, but then he went on to write screenplays, and then he later on wrote 2 more films for Danny Boyle.
Yeah, well, I think The Shallow Grave really showed promise, and I really like it because, like I said, I love thrillers and mysteries, and if you love Hitchcock, this is as close as you're going to get to vintage-type Hitchcock. And you know what it reminds me of? The Trouble with Harry.
It's very much like The Trouble with Harry. but I would say this is darker, a lot more punk.
Well, it grabbed me as soon as it began.
Yeah. What did you think,
Jeff?
Jeff? I'm sorry, we forget you're there. But tell me what you think of
Very
Shallow
similar
Grave.
to here.
It was a very good film. I saw it on a whim, and as soon as the opening images started, it grabbed me and didn't let me go till the end. I loved it for being the black comedy that it was, and I don't know if this says more about me than the film, but I didn't find it as dark as you guys seem to find it.
Why didn't you find it as dark? I mean, when the characters become these really evil people who become killers, I mean, I think that's pretty damn dark.
Well, I just felt that was the natural progression of the film. I mean, I've seen films where it was like a lot sicker how people reacted, Like, even though it's a crappy film, I felt like maybe a film like Very Bad Things, what they did was much worse, and that's supposed to be played as high-end comedy, whereas here I felt this was more natural.
Yeah, Very Bad Things is
Jeff,
that's
brilliant.
like slapstick.
Brilliant, Jeff. I'm really glad you brought that up. That is a obvious, blatant ripoff of Shallow Grave. It's Very Bad Things.
Well, it's just it's slapsticky.
It
Whereas
is.
there is nothing slapstick about Shallow Grave at all.
Oh, I agree with you.
But what I wanted, and a wonderful little mini, not cameo, a little bit more than a cameo, but a wonderful actor that's been in a couple Boyle films that I love, and I'd love to see him get more prominent stuff, is a wonderful Scottish actor by the name of Peter Mullen, who's
in Session 9 and other films.
he was also, he had a wonderful
Terrific
role in
actor.
Children of Men as the...
and let's not forget one of the film he directed, and I believe he has a small part.
the Magdalena Sisters.
Which is a very moving film.
one of the best
movies.
movies of that year that came out, which I think was
Absolutely.
2003.
Very hard film to watch. Very good movie. Jeff, I think I want to ask you, and I think you all can agree with me. Wonderful, wonderful debut of Ewan McGregor.
Yeah.
I didn't really see him. He
McGregor
debuted,
fan.
but I remember Eckelson had he had the media role because he showed such a transition of characters because he was the one that had the principles and that we can't do this and stuff. And he's the one digging the graves and he's the one killing
Right.
people. And he's the one that tried. I saw Ewan McGregor as more like the mealy mouth guy that, had a few scruples at the beginning, and then it seemed as it was going on was the one who was less willing to sacrifice things that were important to him. And he seemed more of a coward as the film went on. But I think the real star-making role for Ewan McGregor was the next film, which is
we'll
one
get
of my
into.
favorite
Well,
movies
we'll get
of all
into that.
time.
We'll get into
Train
that.
Spotting.
Well, of course, Shallow Grave, very low budget film, was not a huge success, but it made a pretty good amount of money for the budget. It gave Danny Boyle enough time to make money and clout to make a movie he's been wanting to make for years, which was Train Spotting, based on a very famous, I believe,
Novel by Irvin Welsh.
which you guys can get into. I would like you to describe it, please.
Well, we should really debate this one, man, because you don't like
Oh,
this
I want
film.
you to. I want you because you're the fan of it, and I will
love it.
debate you.
Matter of fact, I love Train Spotting so much. I was so excited for it. I remember looking at Premiere Magazine, and they had like a little clip. Now, this was before any of the fan sites, or this was before the
Quick
internet.
question: did you read the book before you saw the movie?
No. Yes. I got about halfway through before I saw the movie.
Okay.
And I remember seeing the little picture of the three actors. It was Ewan McGregor, Robert Carlyle, and Ewan Bremner. And I looked at these guys, all their mugs, because they were mugging for the camera. And I thought,
And Johnny.
no, it was just the three guys
really?
in the little picture. But yeah, well,
I was
there
going
was.
to say Johnny Knoxville.
Well, yeah, there was Sick Boy, Johnny
Johnny Lee Miller.
Johnny Lee Miller, and then there was
Mr.
Kevin
Andy Lee
McKidd.
Billy.
Kevin McKidd was also.
Kevin McKidd. That's right. Rome.
Yeah, I mean, it was an amazing cast, and the beautiful, beautiful Kelly MacDonald, who is still churning out great
Yes.
work.
Well, tell me,
She's
why
very
do you
hot.
like the movie? What do you like?
I
about it?
love that you basically took a group of Scottish slackers and brought them into the movie pulls you into their surreal world, and you would think, if you pitch this in Hollywood and said, let's just follow around a bunch of Scottish druggies in their day and see where the day takes them. Oh, and then have the one guy that's not the drug taker, have him be an alcoholic and have him be clearly the most evil one. And it was like a message film. They say it glamorized drugs. I don't think it glamorized drugs at all. It showed this guy reaching into a toilet, diving into a toilet, which was one of the best scenes in the film, trying to save his suppositories because he was so strung out on the junk that he couldn't take a crap, which is how junkies are. So this lifeblood, these suppositories go down the toilet. He's swimming, and it has the wonderful Deep Blue by Brian Eno on the soundtrack. One of the best all-time soundtracks.
I'll give you. That's actually
for
what
a
I'll give
film.
you. I will give you that. I will give you the
Iggy
soundtrack.
Pop, Pulp.
Night clubbing, and of course Lust for Life, which was a hit in the 70s, but became a bigger hit because of the use in the movie. And a new video was shot, and hell, now you see it in every single advertisement from cruise lines to anything. Even though it's it's a drug song, which I think is very funny.
If I could just quickly just say,
Absolutely,
I'm
go
not going to
ahead.
be as long-winded as my friend here.
I'm sorry.
I love Train Spotting, the movie. I love the book. In England, the book was a huge bestseller. And this movie didn't, a lot of people don't realize, this movie didn't come out until like 3 years after the book actually originally came out. And it was a very successful play before it was a movie, the play version of the book. But what I love about the movie is that A, it's just perfectly edited, it's perfectly directed, the visuals are fantastic, the performances are great. It's really funny when it's meant to be funny.
And really horrible when it's meant to be
And
horrible.
it's surprisingly faithful as a movie of this book can be, because there's a lot of stuff in the book that you're just wondering, how the fuck are they going to film that? That scene with the toilet, actually, while in the book, there is no image of him actually going into the toilet. Danny Boyle took that from a Pynchon novel, Gravity's Rainbow, where a character literally, I think, drops his harmonica in a toilet, and in the book it describes how he actually goes inside the toilet and has to like swim into it to grab his harmonica. And I just kind of give Danny Boyle props for sort of this sort of like literary reference thing going on in there. But I love the movie.
Well, Jeff, I want to go to you before because I don't want to forget about you. Now, Jeff, what do you think of Train Spotting compared to, I guess you could say, Shallow Grave and Danny Boyle's other works? What is it that you like and don't like about the film?
Well, what was touched upon earlier, I have to agree with, is that I liked Train Spotting because not only was there the surreal image, but I found as the film went on, there were extreme highs, but then it would always go to a very dark place. But then while you're still in that dark place, the next scene, it would go back up. So it was always ping-ponging you around watching the film. And I felt, even though you had Ewan McGregor as the lead character, and it mostly centered on him, through him you sort of learn the other characters, because at first you're thinking these people are quirky, but then as the film goes on, you see the true, the truth about all of these characters, which I felt sort of like with Shallow Grave, whereas, they start off one way, but by the end of the film, everybody has transformed in a way. Except for Ewan McGregor's character in Train Spotting, I feel like when your first impressions of everybody from Train Spotting to the end of Train Spotting is totally different when it comes to the main characters.
And you notice how Ewan McGregor's character, Mark Renton, is constantly trying to do the right thing, and sure enough, by the end of the film, he does do the right thing by making sure that Spud gets a portion of the money.
Well, I'll tell you what I like and I don't like about Train Spotting. I don't really care for it compared to you guys. I think it's got some wonderful imagery, like you said, with the toilet. I love the use of the soundtrack. I think there's some great performances. In fact, I think the best performance is not from Ewan McGregor, even though he's damn good. It's Robert Carlyle, who's phenomenal.
Begbie.
Carlisle is amazing.
That's the movie that put him on the map as a character actor, and rightfully so. Wonderful.
Evil screen character.
But I love it. He's
everybody's good in this
multi-layered, though.
film.
He's not just a one-dimensional evil guy. You see many layers to him. You see like a really nice side.
Well,
All of a sudden,
he's like a
crazy.
slow
He's
burn.
psychotic.
He's like a slow burn throughout. His character reminds me a lot of Frank Booth.
I guess you could say that. That's a very good analogy there. I mean, a good,
But what don't you like about the film? I have trouble understanding this. Explain for the viewers.
I don't care for a lot of the characters. I just don't like them. I don't think it's pro-drug. I don't think it's anti-drug. It's just a lot of good scenes that fail to come together. I don't care for the character of Sick Boy. And some of these stories, like, he talks about how he crapped the bed, when he went to these people's house.
That was
Spud,
Spud.
I'm sorry. Who was Sick Boy was another character.
Sick Boy was Johnny Lee Miller.
Please forgive me.
He was the one doing the dueling Sean Connerys while they're sitting there
That's a
using
very
the
amusing.
BB gun.
That's a very amusing scene. But I just don't like the whole movie. I really didn't understand the characters that well. I will be honest with you. I will give it another look, and I will give you another.
But my question is, how is it not anti-drug? Because if you think about it, Kevin McKidd's character loses his girlfriend at the end and keeps bugging them on taking heroin. And he was the only one of the friends that didn't take the heroin. And he kept bugging him and bugging him and bugging him. And finally, he gave him a fix.
Can I make another point? why does it matter if it's anti-drug or pro-drug?
Oh,
It's
I
just
didn't
about
say,
life.
I
as
just
a
that's what I
junkie.
said. I felt if you're talking about, I didn't feel like you see any loss in characters. Like, and I mean, there's no death of people. I mean, people do
Well,
die.
Kevin McKidd's character died.
Well, I mean, it's just you don't really see that. I mean, you see it, but it's not really explored as much as I would
Really, I
like
mean,
it to.
he's
I
pretty
don't
much
know. I
rotting
think-
on the floor because he's got the brain tumor, and
I will give it
busy.
another look because it's been a while since I've seen it. To be fair, guys,
And I think that image of him swimming into the toilet to get his, stash, whatever. I mean,
What
that's
about
how
watching the
desperate he is to
baby
hang
crawl
on
on
to
the
it.
ceiling? I mean,
Right.
when he's trying to, get the purge his system.
I will give it another look. I will give it another look. In fact, there's a DVD that's out now, which is the original British version without all the redubbing for U.S. audiences and cuts. So I will like to give it.
I
a
actually
look.
like Trainspotting better than Pulp Fiction, believe it or not.
Well, they're very much similar in styles, aren't they?
Jeff.
Somebody just kicked Jeff.
That was a Jeff.
Jeff, what did you just do there?
reaction.
No, nothing. I was
All right,
just
Mr.
shocked at his statement.
Mr.
All right.
Host, what's the next one?
Well,
sir?
let's go on. Well, let me just get into this too. After Trainspotting, of course, Danny Boyle is hot shit because the movie, it wasn't a blockbuster, but it did very, very well. It actually got a lot of press because, the hot video. Everybody was talking about the film. It did a decent but not amazing business.
Nominated for, I believe, a screenplay.
It did get a lot of respect. That's what we can say.
Oscars.
And people said Danny Boyle was talented. He was then offered to do. He was offered Alien 4, the new one with
The
Sigourney-
Resurrection.
the Resurrection, which he turned down, and he decided he said it was
Smart.
too big for him. He wanted to do something more personal. So then he went on to do, I believe, A Life Less Ordinary. Is that correct?
Yeah, his one and only musical.
Which I be honest with you, I tried to watch some of it. I had to turn off because it honestly looks like Danny Boyle trying to do a film of his, but being controlled by a studio. Now, Mike, you guys would probably explore this better than I could.
Well, he just he
don't
tried
know.
to do a slapstick musical, and just,
Right.
it failed.
And I don't know if I don't know how many Hollywood studios would greenlight a kind of, if you watch like the entirety of A Life Less Ordinary, it's pretty un-Hollywood.
He was on Charlie Rose, and he said that this was his attempt to do a screwball comedy, and he failed, and so be it. I mean,
Well, I actually saw it in theaters. So
same here.
I like to think of it more as a pop art piece because it has very bright colors and it's still very surrealistic and it has a very good cast.
An excellent cast.
But it just has nothing really to it. It's just like they're there, and let's throw them into this situation, and let's throw them into this situation, but it all, in the end, just comes off, I don't know, mismanaged. And
I didn't see any of his style.
It came across as Coen Brothers light.
I didn't see any of his style in there, any of his strengths that were in his other films. It's like anybody could have really done that. It was like someone else doing Danny Boyle's style. That's what I felt, of what I saw.
Well, I mean, I'm not going to debate the merits of Life Less Ordinary. I do think it's his least of his films. I still think there's some very interesting things in there. He tries to do some things that are kind of interesting. Just the notion of trying to do a musical.
I will say that all the films that all the ones that we're going to be talking about today, I would probably say this is the least of Danny Boyle's filmography for me.
I
think
I don't
think-
disagree. I
think
totally
everybody-
agree with you.
All right, well, let's get into another film. This is a film that almost destroyed Danny Boyle's career for a while. I mean, it put a real spike in the road for him. And that film is The Beach. It was originally supposed to be a low-budget film with Ewan McGregor in the lead role. However, the studio wanted to make it a bigger budget film, and they got Leonardo DiCaprio. And this, unfortunately, caused a big rift between Ewan McGregor and Danny Boyle, and they have not worked together since then. However, supposedly they put their differences aside and hope to work together in the near future on a Trainspotting sequel, which I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, porn.
Yeah, porn.
But The Beach, huge flop on all sides of the Atlantic and everyone else.
Shouldn't have been. No.
I think it's not a bad film. I do believe that it would have been a much better film had it been a lower budget film with Ewan McGregor instead of Leonardo DiCaprio. But as is, I think it's an undeserved failure. It should not have been like an $80 million or however much $1 million movie. It should have been a smaller film, and that's how it should have been marketed. It should not have been marketed as a big blockbuster type
I don't
film.
think I don't even recall the film being marketed, tell you
Well,
honestly.
it actually was. It was their big holiday release because when
Really?
I went to see,
Yes, it was. Huge release.
when I went to go to see some other film, it was Fox showing clips of that Fight Club and another film that they had coming out. And so
Castaway, I believe, would it be?
It might have been. I worked at a movie theater, so I saw a lot of films.
I like The Beach. I think it's a very underrated film. And
I agree.
And it doesn't feel like an expensive movie to me either. I mean, you've got Carlisle in it. And DiCaprio, I don't think he's miscast.
He took
I mean,
about-
I'd
I
be
don't-
interested to see what Ewan McGregor would have done with the part, but
And a wonderfully villainous Tilda Swinton.
Tilda Swinton's
Best performance
amazing
in,
in
best
this. She's
performance in the movie.
fantastic.
Best
Yeah.
performance in the movie. I really liked the idea of the new society and the isolation.
Well, it's like Lord of the Flies with adults, basically.
Yes.
But it's still, it's basically what I like. I'm digressing a little bit, but I'll come back on top of what I like about
Yeah.
Danny Boyle. He attempts to do these projects. They're kind of genre projects, but he wants to put his own stamp on them. You know. So basically, this was his Lord of the Flies project. And it was a very interesting take on it, you know, and I thought the protagonist, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, goes through an interesting arc, you know, throughout the film.
That's what made the film so flavorful for me. Is DiCaprio is not a good guy from beginning to end. He's this lost soul that's kind of drifting from spot to spot, and he thinks he found this paradise, when it's anything but. And when he realizes that what he's in is not paradise, his mental faculties kind of go around the bend a little bit, and that's when he visualizes himself within the video game, which I thought was a really cool little juxtaposition towards the end of the film. And then he gets back to where I think he should have been, or he went back to a cynical nature that he started with, and that's where he should have been the whole time, rather than believing that there was paradise.
I like the way that they had Tilda Swinton controlling the people.
It's very much, what was that? We used to talk about that film, the cult movie. You know, when it was like, Get Out Satan, Get Out Satan. Was that?
Yeah, Bomb with Love.
Something
Ticket
Heaven.
Ticket to Heaven.
Ticket to Heaven. It's kind of like a combination of Lord of the Flies and Ticket to Heaven.
A very good movie,
He gets
by the
involved in this cult, and it starts to mess with his head a little bit. And I think it's just very well done. And there's some darkly comedic, quintessential Danny Boyle moments in this film too.
Well,
The
go ahead.
problem was that this film was the first after Titanic for Leonardo DiCaprio, and all these teenage girls wanted to see Jack from Titanic, and what they got was a character-filled story, and they didn't like that, so everybody tended to stay away in droves, and they really missed a really good film.
Well, that's the reason, too, why it bombed so badly, is that Fox spent all this money because they were expecting a hit. People were expecting this to be, hey, it's, like you said, Leonardo DiCaprio's follow-up to Titanic. It was already, built up to be this huge success, and when it wasn't, it really, it really brought down the careers of everybody for a while. But after that, of course, Danny Boyle said, you know what? Screw this. I'm getting out of here. I'm going back to England. I'm going to make a movie that's personal to me, low budget, where I have control. And he went on to do 28 Days Later, which we have discussed before, and it's also had a sequel which he produced but not direct. 28 Days Later, as we all gone on record, we think is a very unique film.
It had 28 Days Later single-handedly revived the zombie picture. Yeah.
I love the first half of the movie. The second half I have some problems with.
I agree.
But the second movie is even better than the first. In fact, there's going to be a third. There's going to be a third film called 28 Months Later, which will be the final movie in the trilogy, which I'm looking forward to. Danny Boyle did a terrific job, and what I love is that he took the DV format and made a new type of film that had never been really seen before, and I loved every moment of it.
The best use of mini DV I think I've seen.
And it really added to the film instead of taking it away. I didn't feel like he did it for budgetary reasons. I felt he did it, even though he did, I felt he did it just to get like a guerrilla view of this action.
But he did do it for budget. I mean, the way he explained it was for practical reasons too. I mean, in order to set up all those shots where you have vast, this whole vista of London completely desolate and no one around and cars turned over, he went to mini DV largely because it's easier to fake these shots. You're going to have tons of people no matter where you go. So he'd ask people to stand to the side, crowds, so they quickly can move the camera to one spot, show nobody there, and then he could pick up the camera. Okay, everyone move, continue walking, so he can take another shot where you don't see anybody either. So
really
it was practicality.
Really running gun.
And once again, you have an instance like with Train Spotting or with Shallow Grave. Once again, Danny Boyle hits a jackpot when it comes to casting, discovers a wonderful talent by the name of Cillian Murphy.
Yeah, it's great.
And a hot piece of ass and a good actress in Naomi Harris. And he gets a wonderful role out of Brendan Gleeson,
A
who
great
is
performance
always
from Brendan
good,
Gleeson.
and brings back Christopher Eccleston again.
I don't know how much time we have here, but I want to give Jeff, I want to give you the comment 28 Days Later, just really quickly what you think of it. I mean, basically, Cillian Murphy is now his new Danny Boyle. We have 3 minutes left, so make it quick.
You mean his new
Ewan
McGregor?
Yeah, Ewan McGregor. Go ahead.
Either way, we've discussed it before. I like the film. I agree with you that the second one is better, and the second half of 28 Days Later does have its problems, but I enjoyed it thoroughly.
I think like I said, the first half of the first 28 days, is 28 Days Later is the best of both movies. However, the second half, the second movie, both halves are stronger than the whole movie of the first one.
Let's move on to the next
All right,
one.
Danny
Well,
Boyle
wait.
then went on to do Millions, which is I guess you could say a fairy tale type, fable type movie, which I don't really want to discuss that because I didn't have a chance really to see
Well,
it.
Millions is wonderful.
I haven't
Yes,
seen it yet
is.
either.
I love
We will see
Yes.
it, and we will review that. But the film that we do want to review, because we only
we
have
have
2 minutes
time?
left. We have like 2 minutes, so let's make it quick. Will be Sunshine,
Oh.
which is a
Can we
new
do a
science
show
fiction
on this?
film.
Can we do another show?
I would love to, but we can't do a whole show on
Let's
Sunshine.
talk about it.
Let's talk a little bit about Sunshine, and if we like to, we'll
Let's
talk
not-
about more.
Yes.
I didn't see it.
Well, we'll talk about it, and we'll get you see it, Jeff. But Sunshine is Danny Boyle's first foray into pure science fiction in the terms of big budget, grand scale alien type movies. It concerns people going into outer space to save the Earth and the problems that they're having, on the ship.
The problem, the sun's dying out. They have to send a team of astronauts.
Well, this isn't an alien-style movie. This is more in a.
There's
in
no
a-
aliens.
Oh, I'm
in
talking
here.
just being alone.
this
in
is
science
space.
fiction.
Well, it says, yeah, it's what it is. It's the best science fiction film in a very long time, largely because it's a real science fiction movie. You have different kinds of science fiction movies. You have the alien type science fiction movies. You have like the more fantasy type science fiction movies, and then you have real science fiction movies, the 2001: A Space Odysseys, that kind of thing. This is his throwback to like 2001, to Solaris, to Silent Running, things like that, which are
Event Horizon.
Event Horizon.
It does have a Event Horizon reference.
But the thing about his films are that, again, it's Danny Boyle attempting a genre. 28 Days Later was his zombie film. Now he's going to try his, sci-fi. Ship sends out a distress call. Another ship follows it. Strange, profound, weird things happen as a result. And this is one of the best films of that kind you're going to see.
One of the best
You've
films of the
got to
year.
see this on the big screen.
One of the best films
My
of the year.
favorite film of the year, and you do have to see it on the big screen. It will. I was queasy at one time because the effects are so overwhelming. The visuals are so. We got a next show.
We'll talk about it
We'll
more.
talk more. I just want to quickly say what's great about this film. The reason why you guys go run out and see it is that it's not one of those films where some guy panics, makes a big mistake, and ruins it for everybody else. Every decision made in this film is an intelligent decision, even though it goes wrong.
God bless Alex Garland.
Watch it in next week. We'll talk about Sunshine as well as some other films. Until next week, I'm Edwin Samuelson. Thank you. And
ya.
thank you, Jeff, for being here.
You're welcome.
See you, Jeff.
Bye, Jeff.
See ya.
Bye, Jeff.
How's my hair?